Welcome to June's Coastal Gardener. While it's already June, seems like it's going by awfully quickly. A little later on in the show, we'll have Chantel in the kitchen with a great green bean recipe. A little bit later, we'll have Mark Weekly, our Arboretum coordinator, talking about the new herbaceous perennial border. You got to come see that. But before we get to all of those, we want to show you a project here that we're standing on in the formerly wooded area where we've added a lot of sod or turf, whatever you want to call it. We've made a new lawn here at the Arboretum. One thing that a lot of people think about when they think about turf and growing a new lawn, especially if you're from colder climates, you wouldn't think about starting a lawn this time of year, as summer's really almost here and it's getting hot. But keep in mind, warm season grasses, centipede, Bermuda, zoysia, St. Augustine, they all love it hot. The hotter the better. Warm nights, hot days, these grasses are going to grow really well. A little bit of cool weather and they slow down. So the ideal time to start or sod a new lawn is right now when you've got most of that heat ahead of you, so you'll get great rooting and that plant will be well established going into the fall and winter. So right now is a good time to start from sod or plugs. The other question a lot of people ask is, what is the best lawn or what's the best turf? And that's a hard question to answer. Centipede grass is more popular than any other because generally it's easy to maintain, doesn't require as much mowing, as much fertilization, all of that basic maintenance stuff, but it does have some problems. If you put it in places where it's trafficked heavily, it doesn't like that. If you have the insect problem called ground pearl, centipede will not tolerate them. So it's not the perfect solution for every situation, like most things in life, I guess. But we chose crown zoysia here because this is what we had in the wedding lawn that's already established, and this is kind of a continuation of the wedding lawn. This area will be used for events, to put tents on, those kind of things, so it made sense for us to choose that grass that was already here. The other thing about it is you can see we removed some trees, and that's one of the things you're going to have to do if you're going to grow turf grass, is you can't grow it in dense shade. Even the most shade-tolerant grass, St. Augustine, is not going to grow in dense shade. You're going to need 6 hours of sunlight even to grow St. Augustine. So you see we have some dappled shade here, but at times during the day we get direct sun on the whole area. So we think we'll be able to get by with zoysia, which is kind of middling for shade tolerance. It's also fairly good for wear tolerance. Not quite as good as Bermuda, but it does tolerate foot traffic and all the things that happen with events in a public place like here at the Arboretum. Sometimes when people are starting from sod, they think they don't have to do any of that prep work, but believe me, you're going to have to do all of that hard work, getting the pH right, getting the fertility right, using that soil test data, digging that material, getting all the stumps and roots and bricks and things out of the way, prepping that soil just like we always talk about, like you might for an azalea or a camellia. Maybe not quite as good as that, but you still have to get that soil well aerated, get all the stuff out of there, get the fertility right if you're going to expect these turf grasses to do well. You see, that's a lot of work that we did here with this tractor-mounted rototiller. We're working all this soil up. Once you've got all of the amendments mixed in, you've got it well aerated, you've got the roots and the stumps and all that out, you really got to think about the grade. Most of our soils around here are fairly, they infiltration rates, they're sandy, this water moves on fairly well. But especially where you don't have soil like that, you want to make sure you don't have water pooling in areas on the new lawn area. So making sure that the water's going to infiltrate quickly or move off is very important to the long-term success of the project. It's pretty difficult to start a new lawn without water, even if it's just a sprinkler on the end of a hose in a small area. Of course, in an area this size, we've got irrigation in ground using a controller that automatically kicks it on when we want it to. And that's very important in managing this turf. Most of us, when we think about managing a new thing, they think, well, you got to water a lot. You do have to water often when it's new like it is now, because you got a plant that doesn't have any roots on it. But what you're doing is watering 3, 4, 5 times during the hottest part of the day to keep that grass from stressing, keep it cooled off, keep it moist, and then as those roots tack down and start to take up water, you can start backing off the frequency and increase the duration. After you've mowed it a couple of times, you'll be back to what we always say about an established lawn of wait until you see a little bit of stress, water thoroughly, and then wait again until you see more stress. But irrigation is very important, but you don't have to just keep it sloppy wet. Keep it moist and keep it from getting stressed, and the roots will tack down and work very quickly. This area had already been worked pretty hard, getting the stumps out and the roots and all of that, so digging for the irrigation was pretty easy. As you can see, we just kind of scooped that out and got that pipe in and the heads in. not a big problem here. You might have more difficulty if you don't have a disturbed site like we had. But once we've gotten that soil back over that, gotten it all laid back out, got that grade just like we wanted, it's time to think about how we're going to do the actual sodding itself. For an area this size that's readily accessible with fairly good size equipment, we chose to use big roll sod. Now these big rolls, these particular ones are 20 square yards, so you don't have to handle so much the small things like you might do with squares or smaller rolls. Works great, you have fewer seams, so it looks better the day it goes down than the smaller does. But if you can't get equipment in or you don't have access to that, then obviously the slabs or the small rolls are going to be the way you would go. Whether you choose the big rolls or the small rolls or slabs, a few things to keep in mind to make the job look good and get started better and have a better lawn more quickly. One thing, make sure your seams are butted directly against each other. If you leave a gap, it's going to take a while for the grass to fill that in. It's not going to look as good the day it goes down. Make sure that you have kind of an idea of what the shape of it is and even mark it out in paint so you'll know when you're pulling that rolls or laying those rolls out, you won't waste the sod. You're going to waste a little bit no matter what, but sometimes it makes sense to take a piece that's on one side and use it on another because the angle's already close enough. The irrigation heads, especially those that are out in the center parts of the lawn area of the new sod, really need to be marked. What we normally use are these kind of flags that you can buy with the metal stake. You can put those up next to each head. When you pull over that, you'll either have to take a machete or a bush axe or even a pair of pruners and just cut an opening in that and make sure that the head is at the right height so the lawnmower, when it goes over, it won't damage the head. A couple of other things to keep in mind to really make the job work and look good. Before you put the sod down, run the water and get good soil moisture underneath the sod. It'll make a huge difference in keeping that sod moist and reducing the stress. Once you've got all the pieces put in, it's shaped like you want it, everything, the grade is nice, all the seams are nice and tight, it's time to start the watering. As I said, you don't need a lot of water right now at a time. You need water often during the day when it's hot to take away that stress. So 4 or 5 minutes on the sprays, maybe 8 or 10 on the rotor zones, just to keep it moist while the plants are rooting. One question a lot of people have is, how long does it take? That's one of the great things about this time of year and doing it now is that this grass is going to attack roots and take off and grow very quickly, much more quickly than it would be, say, in September or October when the grasses aren't growing much. So with this grass, you'll probably be able to find roots tacking down within 48 hours. You go up and grab it, you'll feel resistance as those roots start to hold on. And then within a couple of weeks, it'll look like a lawn and you'll see it all filled in, especially if you've done a good job of putting the grass down. So it's a lot of work, but it's quick, it's instant gratification, and this is the perfect time to do it. After the break, we'll show you the brand new herbaceous perennial border here at the Arboretum. Welcome back to the show. Now, one of the things we always like to do here on the Coastal Gardener is feature things here in the Arboretum, the Hanover County Arboretum, and we show you a lot of things. And one thing we're talking about this time is the herbaceous perennial border, which has just been redone. We have Mark Weekly, who's our Arboretum coordinator here, who takes care of a lot of getting these plants in and choosing them and doing all of that. So, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Appreciate you being here. Tell us a little bit about the history of the perennial border here at the Arboretum.
Well, originally the perennial border was around the wedding lawn, and it was so overgrown and shaded and it just needed to go. So we found it a nice sunny location here where we're at. We moved 90% of what was there and it was just way too big. It outgrew the space, the scale was wrong, too much of the same old stuff.
And that's kind of how it looked.
Yeah.
Oh, mid to late summer last year, it was just huge. You couldn't even see past it into the rest of the garden, could you?
Yeah, they overwhelmed the space, and it was time to change it out. Some folks came in after Susan Hart passed, and they wanted to dedicate the perennial border to her, so we've been working with them. And
when you're talking about Susan Hart, for the benefit of the people who are out there, Susan was a writer for the Star News here in Wilmington, the garden writer for many years, and passed away, what, a year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that. So this will be the Susan Hart herbaceous perennial border
Yes.
here at the Arboretum, and it'll have a plaque designating that at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of her favorite plants are in here. The yellow rose was her favorite. Some of the grasses that she loved. And we did keep plants that she used to rub on this one grass, so we kept that grass.
What are you talking about, the miscanthus?
Yeah, the miscanthus. She loved to pet it as she walked by.
Yeah, I remember that. But one of the things that I've noticed you've done with this border is I see these boulders here. Tell us a little bit about the thought process behind the design of it and why you did what you did.
Well, seeing it in winter last year was a really good indication that it had to change. It was just a flat patch of soil.
Yeah.
So we wanted some topography, get some grade changes, give it a little interest in the winter. And 17 boulders later, there we are.
And you've added like the arborvitaes and some other things. I think you can add some more, but you've added some evergreen shrubs. And that you think about a perennial border, you may not think about that, but tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you kind of need a foil for the plants to play against. And then also in the wintertime when everything goes to sleep, you need something that's going to be there, you know, interesting year round.
So it doesn't look like that patch of soil that you were
Yeah.
talking about. Well, I know one of your favorite things to do is put colors and textures and do the art side of that because of your background. And most of us, that casual gardener, probably won't appreciate all that you've done here, but give us a little bit of a hint of the art and the design of how you've put this together.
Well, I studied a lot of the older gardens, in particular Monet's garden was just beautiful. He had a great way of using color to make distance seem a lot greater. So I kind of have tried to do that here. I don't have 100 acres, so.
Come on. You only have 6 acres, right?
Yeah, but to do this, we've mounted some of the same colors throughout. Come fall, the Mexican bush sage will be represented throughout the border, and that color of purple will just haze clear through. And it's a lot of times these combinations just happen by accident. They came off the truck that way and they look great together, and sometimes they came out, you know, the way I had planned. So.
Well, I think that's the truth for most of us as gardeners. You have those happy accidents. You have the unhappy ones too sometimes.
Yeah.
But so it's just been planted as we're filming this, but this border should come into its own probably by the end of this month and the end of June. You'll really be able to see a lot of these plants coming on. And speaking of plants, you know, we worked hard to get some things that were maybe not quite the same old stuff that we always plant as perennials here, the stuff you can always find. Give us 3 or 4 of the ones you think have the greatest potential to excite somebody who might come and look.
Well, a lot of people love purple coneflower, the echinaceas. We have one called Now Cheesier, which looks like macaroni and cheese. It's that bright, brilliant orange. We have one that's called Pink Poodle that actually looks like a zinnia. The center of the flower is so full. We've got a beautiful Lysimachia that everybody's just like, where can I get this? And,
that's the variegated one.
yeah, silver with a burgundy flower. I mean, it's really hard to beat. And, you know, just things like that, trying the new varieties and seeing what they do. I know some of this won't survive, but it's always worth taking a chance because, I mean, we have plants here that shouldn't be. And
yeah, I think that's the fun of, and that's part of our job here, as you well know, to try the new varieties, bring stuff in, trial it, let people know, let people see it like we're doing here.
Yeah.
And like you say, sometimes the conventional wisdom is correct, and sometimes it's not. So we don't have any way of knowing. There's a lot of work gone into the new herbaceous perennial border here at the Arboretum. We certainly encourage you to come out and take a look at it as it grows in. I think you're going to find it to be one of the highlights of this summer season here at the Arboretum. And Mark Weekley, thanks for joining us and giving us a little bit of the background of how that came to be. We certainly appreciate all that you're doing here for us.
Thank you.
Stay with us after the break. We're going to go to the kitchen with Chantel for a summer treat.
Welcome to the kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make some tasty sesame green beans. In North Carolina, green beans are available through the months of June through September, and they are a great source of fiber, vitamin A, and protein. And fiber is very important to the diet, and it can help prevent cardiovascular disease, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. Most Americans, however, don't get enough fiber in their diets, and they only consume about 15 grams of the 25 to 38 grams that are recommended daily. So today I'm going to show you a very delicious way to get fiber in your diet. So I'm going to start with green beans, and there are 5 additional ingredients: chicken broth, oil, pepper, salt, and sesame seeds. So to get started, you just want to get your green beans and wash them, and then you're going to trim the ends off and cut them into about 2-inch pieces. When you're about done cutting your beans, go ahead and turn your pan on to medium-high heat and get the olive oil heating up. And go ahead and put the sesame seeds in as well. So you're going to toast them just a little bit before you put the green beans in. Okay, so you want to make sure you give your sesame seeds a stir and don't let them brown too much, but they should start to change color a little bit, and once that starts to happen, you can add your green beans to it. And this is about a pound of green beans for 4 servings. Just go ahead and add that and give it a stir. And then you're going to cook it about 5 minutes or so. You'll notice that the green beans will start to lighten up in color a little bit once they start to cook more, and so you're going to wait about 5 minutes for that to happen, and then we'll add the rest of the ingredients. Okay, once your beans start to brighten in color a little bit, then you can go ahead and add the chicken broth, salt, and pepper. Give that a little stir, and then go ahead and cover it and cook it for about 10 minutes. Just let those flavors really soak into the beans. Okay, so go ahead and remove your lid after about 10 minutes. And then you can turn your stovetop on medium, high heat, higher heat again. So you'll see all the steam coming up as the liquid becomes evaporated. So just go ahead and let all that cook out on about high heat, but you want to stir it as well so that whatever's in the center of your pan doesn't burn. Well, I've got the finished product here, sesame green beans, and check us out on Facebook for upcoming classes. In fact, I've got a canning class coming up in June for tomatoes. Tomatoes are going to be available soon, and lots of other vegetables. So please check out our website for our canning class. Hope to see you there.